Okay, well, what I wanted to do really quick for my class, I wanted to show you guys probably one of our most common tools that we use, which is the 4.5-inch grinder. So sometimes you'll hear people call them a peanut grinder, but the real technical name is 4.5-inch grinder. So anyways, this is a super common tool. We use this every day as a welder, but it's also a super dangerous tool. So I want to go over a couple things here really quick on the grinder before you guys are here in class so that you'll know kind of what to do with this guy. So anyways, very first thing you probably should know is when we walk through the door here, safety glasses. We have safety glasses on all the time. And then generally speaking, I'll have gloves on. So I do have my gloves right here. Whenever I'm messing with the grinder, I definitely have gloves on and the grinder is unplugged. So don't find yourself tempted to cut a little bit of time by leaving it plugged in and, oh, I just won't hit the trigger. Little safety on these things does break sometimes. So don't have it plugged in when you're messing with the grinder, ever. So very first things first, we have several different kinds of grinding wheels. So we have a cutoff wheel, so it's really thin, and this is made so that it'll actually cut through metal. So we could use this to cut maybe a slice into a piece of pipe or cut some sheet metal. We also have wire wheel. These are probably the most dangerous of all of them. If you look at this thing close here, hopefully you can see that. It's a whole bunch of little wires that are stranded together, just twisted together. And this thing spins at about 11,000 RPM. So another thing that you'll see me wearing whenever I'm in the shop is a welding jacket. And part of that is because if I just have, say, my t-shirt on that's underneath here, a wire wheel will grab the t-shirt and it'll actually pull it into your body. So you don't want that, that's no fun. So wire wheel, so what do we use this thing for? Pretty gnarly tool. Well, we use this wire wheel for, say, removing rust or getting paint off of a material, just our really basic prep. We'll use wire wheel to rip off the top layer of junk or garbage or mill scale. Next thing that we use, probably not quite as common, but we use what's called a flapper disc. And it's a bunch of little individual pieces of sandpaper that are all glued together on this disc. And what this thing is good for is really polishing metal. You can remove metal with this thing, so you can finish up a bevel. You can remove metal with these. You don't want to remove too much metal with a polishing or with a flapper disc because it does just wear out the flapper discs, and these things are pretty expensive. We're looking at, 13 bucks a piece for one of these. But it does a really super clean job, makes our metal really nice and shiny. So everybody likes to use these and doesn't put great big scratches into our metal like the grinding wheel. So this is the most typical thing that you guys will use, is this grinding wheel. As you can see, it's a bit different than the cutoff wheel, just in its thickness. So this is actually made for removing metal. So we could take this and we could grind out a bad weld, or we can put a bevel onto a plate. We could use this grinding wheel to really kind of smooth metal into one piece into another. So this is our most common used attachment for the grinder itself. And yeah, lots of uses. You could also use this for cleaning rust off of metal. So you can kind of substitute the grinding wheel for a wire wheel in a lot of ways, but for the sake of efficiency, a lot of times you just want to use a wire wheel. But grinding wheels are used a ton. You'll use these every day. You'll use these every day in the welding class. Every day on the job, you'll use a grinding wheel, just like this one. If you look at it closely, it's basically stone. It's all kind of adhered together. But even these guys can be really dangerous too. One of the ways that these can be dangerous is sometimes a grinding wheel might get dropped. So I'm gonna stick this one on here, and I'll just show you guys a quick little demonstration of what could happen. Say you have a grinder, you know, we're working, so things happen, but it falls onto the ground, and you might put a crack into this grinding wheel, right? Or maybe a piece breaks off. Well, then you turn on the grinding wheel, and it destabilized the whole grinding wheel, it wrecked it. Well, this whole grinding wheel can come flying apart on you. Another reason why you definitely want to have your PPE on, your glasses, your gloves, your jacket. Just this weekend, I was actually cutting it was a hitch pin. I have a locking hitch pin. I couldn't find the key for it, so unfortunately I had to cut my $20 hitch pin off of my truck, but I was using a cutoff wheel like this. Well, apparently it had a little nick in there, and I didn't inspect my stuff like I'm supposed to, so my bad. But as soon as I touched that hitch pin with the cutoff wheel, this thing came apart a little bit. Luckily, I was wearing gloves and everything like that, and I was keeping it out of my line of sight. You know, you don't want it to be right in line with your face when you're cutting. And so just the parts of this kind of came apart, and everything was fine. I just replaced the cutoff wheel. So anyways, if I continue on here, you'll see that some of the wheels have this arbor on here, so that all that you have to do is just put this on here, and then it'll just thread on, right? Well, some of them do not. Some of them are like this, and they actually just lay right here on the grinding, on the grinder. There's a little stop pin here that they lay on. And then on top of that, we actually tighten our new nut right on top of it. And you have to make sure this goes down on the right way. If you put it down one direction, that's the incorrect way. This is how you test this. This will just spin around without actually spinning our arbor here. So see that? So I'll take this back apart. I'll flip the nut over. Okay, and now, see that everything turns together. That's how we know it's on there correctly. For the most part in this class, I have everything pretty much thread on, so you probably won't have to worry about using the little nut, but you'll probably just be threading stuff on. So I'm going to continue on here, and we're going to pretend like we're going to get ready to grind something with the grinding wheel. First thing we do is we look at the entire grinder. So I know this one's brand new, but I want to check a couple things. I'm going to check the guard. So I'm going to make sure that the guard doesn't just start rotating. So I check the guard. Yep, it's on there tight. I'm going to check the right here on the guard. Sometimes when you're in different positions, it's like, oh man, I want to grind on this side of the grinder, but the guard's in the way. You know, I'm trying to grind like right here. Well, it's a little push button on these DeWalt grinders right here, and then I can rotate this. And then it locks back into place, so now I can use that side of the grinder. Don't be tempted. When I started, everybody was just taking the grinding wheel, or the grinder guards right off. Nobody used grinder guards. Oh, you don't want to use that, it gets in the way when you're grinding pipe. Well, trust me, I've seen enough accidents with grinders now. I use a guard. So you definitely want to use the guard. And you want to make sure the guard's not broken. I've also seen accidents where the grinder guard is broken, it rotates freely, and you could still get your shirt all caught up in the grinder. And I have some pictures of that, and I'll show you guys that as well. Some of the pictures of students that have gotten the grinder with a wire wheel stuck in their shirt, in their pants. Just not good, definitely not good. And just generally cut up. You don't want that. So anyways, going back, we're looking at the grinder. Our guard, we know our guard is good. It rotates freely when I push the little safety button here to rotate the guard. And it clicks into place. This is our trigger. This is how we actually start the grinder. and it's got a safety on it as well, so that way it doesn't just automatically turn on whenever we push on this. So when we start the grinder, we pull the safety down and then depress the trigger. So if that safety is broken, which they do break, it's mechanical, everything mechanical breaks. If that safety right there is broken, we don't use the grinder. And I actually have another story about that. I was grinding on a piece of plate and I had the grinder just sitting on the edge of a table. Let me see if you guys can see that here. The grinder is sitting on the edge of the table like that, so you see how it's right on the trigger? Well, the the safety for the trigger there was gone, it was broken, and I leaned across this thing to work on something, and I turned on the grinder. And grinder turns on, and it didn't have a guard on either, so multiple things were going wrong. It actually spun the grinder around and cut through my leather jacket and actually cut into my abs, but luckily they're made out of steel, so it just sparked a little bit off of them and it was all okay. No, but in all seriousness, it did cut my stomach open. It wasn't very fun. Having something that is as rough and porous as that cutting into your skin is usually not a very fun thing to do. So we always want to check and make sure that that little trigger guard right there is working. Next thing that we check on the grinder is the cord. So we're going to make sure that this cord didn't get ran over by the forklift or anything like that. There's no nicks in it. Nothing like that. The plug is on there. Plug looks good. Okay, so everything's checking out. So let's see. And I'm going to pause for a second. Oh no, we're going to keep going. Okay, so everything's checking out. We're good. I have a little thing that's watching my GoPro right here on my phone, so I thought I messed something up, but we're good. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put the grinding disc on here. I stick it on. I have my gloves on. Okay, and then I'm going to push on this little, this is our brake. I'm going to push on that so I can tighten up the wheel. So you use this brake to tighten the wheel and take the wheel off. So if you watch, it stops in certain places and goes in. See that? Click. Click. And depresses. So when I want to take the wheel off, I can't just spin this off by hand. See, it just spins forever. Okay, I'm going to push on that button right here. I'm going to spin this until it stops. Now it's stopped. Now I can take it off. Okay. But right now, I'm going to lock it on. So I'm going to go, okay, twisted the wheel on, click, okay, it's on there pretty firm. And I don't need to really reef down on this really hard. No, I don't need to do that. All I'm going to do is kind of tighten it up a little bit, inspect everything. Oh, it looks pretty good. Everything's on there. Now is when I would actually plug it in. I do have extension cords over here. I'm not going to do that for you, but another thing is that I don't have them on for the sake of the demonstration video, but when you're going to use a grinder, you should always have in hearing protection, and I have a face shield right here. I have a face shield over your safety glasses. That just helps all those sparks, you know. And then we could go ahead and everything's secure. Our piece of metal that we're going to be actually grinding on should be clamped down. So we'll use a clamp and clamp those down to the work table, and we can start grinding. And as always, if you guys have any questions about running the grinder, let me know. You know, I would much rather you guys ask me a question than somebody gets hurt. So definitely let me know. That's probably a lot of different things, and we'll go over it again. But this video is for your reference, so you can see like, hey, how did that wheel go back on there? Or what was I supposed to check on the grinder? you come back to this video and check it out at any time. So anyways, enjoy.